is kind of blowing my mind. The Barabar Caves in India, I saw a documentary on it. They have LiDAR scanned the inside of these stone caves built into the rock face.
A very impressive facade. Very, very beautiful.
The precision and the measurements and the smoothness, it is precise to like within 0.01 of a millimeter.
Wow, so this is the first cave we've entered here at Barabar Hill.
It's almost impossible for the human eye and the human hand to make that kind of surface, to make that kind of precision into stone.
Because these are the earliest known caves in all of India. So this is mind-blowing. I did not know.
Also, you come up against a problem. If people could only historically have been using hand tools, their eyes and their hand tools, how did they get it so smooth? How did they get it so precise? If the human eye can't work to that level of detail, what can?
There is a place in the Bihar region of India, carved into the oldest rock on the surface of this planet, that should not exist. Not because it is ruined, not because it is crumbling, but because it is too perfect. The walls inside these caves reflect sound like a modern concert hall. The granite surfaces are polished to a mirror finish so precise that modern laser measurements cannot find a single deviation greater than a fraction of a millimeter. And here is the part that breaks every conventional theory we have ever built. This was done over 2,300 years ago with tools that, according to mainstream archaeology, should have been completely incapable of achieving this result. Welcome to the Barabar Caves, and before this video is over, you are going to question everything you thought you knew about who came before us. The Barabar Hills sit quietly in the Jahanabad district of Bihar, India. On the surface, they look like any ancient granite outcropping, worn by centuries of wind and rain. But when you step inside, the atmosphere changes completely. The air feels different. The silence has a texture, and the walls, those impossibly smooth walls, seem to hold something in them, like a memory the stone refuses to release. There are 4 main caves in the Barabar complex: the Karan Chopar, the Lomas Rishi, the Sudama, and the Viswamitra. Each one has been partially attributed to the Mauryan Empire, specifically to the reign of Emperor Ashoka around 250 BCE. There are inscriptions, Ashokan inscriptions, that credit the gifting of these caves to the Ajivika monks. And mainstream history stops right there, as if the inscription answers every question. But it does not, because here is what the inscription does not explain. It does not explain how. It does not explain what tools left a surface so refined that modern engineers, using modern equipment, still struggle to replicate it. And it certainly does not explain why the acoustic design of these caves mirrors principles that were not formally documented in human science until the 20th century. Let us talk about the polishing, because this is where the heartbeat of something older begins to pound through the stone. Granite is one of the hardest natural materials on Earth, rating between 6 and 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. To achieve the level of polish found inside the Barabar Caves using the tools available to the Mauryan period, which were primarily copper, wood, and stone implements, would require not just centuries of labor. It would require a level of mechanical precision and material science that simply did not exist in 250 BCE. According to the tools, this is a biological and technological impossibility. Researchers and engineers who have studied the caves have noted that the interior surface finish rivals what we today call optical grade polishing, the same standard used in the production of lenses and scientific instruments. The question that the archaeological community has never satisfactorily answered is this: where did this knowledge come from? And more importantly, where did it go? Because after the Barabar Caves, this level of granite polishing simply vanishes from the historical record. No gradual decline, no evolution into something better. It disappears, as if the people who knew how to do it were gone, as if the knowledge was pre-cataclysmic, belonging to a world that ended before the world we call ancient even began. Now let us layer something even more extraordinary on top of the engineering mystery, the acoustics. When sound is produced inside the Barabar Caves, it does not simply echo, it reverberates in a way that is deeply, almost unnervingly intentional. The curved ceilings, the specific dimensions of the chambers, the angle of the walls, everything works together to create a resonance that modern acoustic engineers have classified as a deliberate design choice. This is not accidental architecture. This is acoustic archaeology in its most profound form. Researchers studying ancient sacred sites across the world, from the hypogeum of Halsaflieni in Malta to the megalithic chambers of Newgrange in Ireland, have found a recurring pattern. These structures were built to produce specific sound frequencies, frequencies that, based on neurological studies, directly affect human consciousness, inducing states of deep meditation, heightened awareness, and even what some researchers describe as altered perception. The Barabar Caves fit this pattern exactly. So now the question shifts from how were they built to why and for whom. Because if these were simply meditation caves for wandering monks, why does the acoustic engineering reflect a level of intentional design that goes far beyond spiritual convenience and far deeper into a pre-cataclysmic tradition of building spaces that interact with the human nervous system on a frequency level? Here is the theory that the mainstream does not want to sit with, because it is uncomfortable and because it pulls the foundation out from under everything we teach in schools about linear human progress. What if Ashoka did not build the Barabar Caves? What if he simply found them? What if the Ashokan inscription is not a record of construction, but a record of donation, a powerful emperor gifting to his monks a structure that was already ancient, already finished, already standing in its impossible perfection when his civilization was still learning to write? This is not a fringe idea invented by internet theorists. It is a pattern that repeats across the ancient world. The Egyptians built around and on top of structures whose origins they themselves could not explain. The Inca at Sacsayhuaman integrated their stonework into pre-existing megalithic walls that their own legends attributed to a race of giants who lived before the flood. The Sumerians, the civilization we call the cradle of human society, began their written history by referencing kings who lived before the deluge, kings who ruled for tens of thousands of years. Every major ancient civilization seems to share the same quiet secret. They were not the first. They were the inheritors, living in the ruins and the remnants of something that came before the cataclysm, something that was erased.
This is the heartbeat that this channel exists to find. Underneath the layer of history we call ancient lies another layer, pre-cataclysmic, belonging to a global civilization that understood granite, understood acoustics, understood the human nervous system, and left traces of that understanding encoded in stone across 6 continents. The Barabar Caves are not an anomaly. They are a data point. Connect them to the perfectly polished stone boxes inside the Serapeum of Saqqara in Egypt. Connect them to the laser-flat granite surfaces at Pumapunku in Bolivia. Connect them to the underground acoustic chambers of Malta and the megalithic sites of Turkey, and a pattern emerges that is too consistent, too technically coherent to be coincidence. A forgotten global system built by a civilization whose name we do not know, whose history was swallowed by a catastrophe so total that only the stone survived, and the stone is speaking, if you know how to listen. The Barabar Caves are still standing in Bihar, India, largely ignored by the mainstream world, visited by a handful of tourists each year, studied by too few researchers, and understood by almost none. But the walls remember. The polished granite holds the fingerprints of hands that worked it long before Ashoka was born, long before the Mauryan Empire rose, long before the history we were taught began. History is not dead, it is waiting. It is carved into rock, encoded in sound, and buried beneath the comfortable stories we tell ourselves about who we are and how far we have come. The pulse of the past is still beating. You just have to stop and listen. I am your host, and this is The Hidden Heartbeat. Subscribe, stay in the archive, and never stop asking the questions that history forgot to answer.